Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Kalachan Ji ki jai. Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Thanks everybody for coming. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We will recite the Sanskrit together and English. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of God. One should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta Preshu Patreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances unto them, and I beg for service life after life. And Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I pray that I can say something that may be enlivening or something presented in a way you have not yet heard, or in a way that you have heard, but it helps to go deeper. If I say anything that's off, I beg my seniors in the room to please correct me. Do not hesitate. Today we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, and we're going to read through verses, verses 30 through 41. Oh, it's not loading? We're going to go through 30 to 41. 30 to 41. Okay. Please begin the recitation of the translations.
While so excellently ruling the universe, King Priyavrata once became dissatisfied with the circumambulation of the most powerful sun god. Encircling Samru hill on his chariot, the sun god illuminates all the surrounding planetary systems. However, when the sun is on the northern side of the hill, the south receives less light, and when the sun is on the south, the north receives less. King Priyavrata disliked this situation and therefore decided to make daylight in the part of the universe where there was night. He followed the orbit of the sun god on a brilliant chariot and thus fulfilled his desire. He could perform such wonderful activities because of the power he had achieved by worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
When Priyavrata drove his chariot behind the sun, the rims of his chariot wheels created impressions that later became 7 oceans, dividing the planetary system known as Bhu Mandala into 7 islands.
This is why we have these continents and oceans.
The names of the islands are Jambu, Plaksha, Salmali, Kusha, Kroncha, Saka, and Pushkara. Each island is twice as large as the one preceding it, and each is surrounded by a liquid substance, beyond which is the next island.
Actually, it seems like this is not on this planet.
Yeah, the Bhumandala, I think, is the greater earthly plane. Then there's the
Okay.
Earth planet itself.
Yeah, I got confused for a second there too, but after.
Because it's going to talk about the oceans in this verse. The 7 oceans respectively contain salt water, sugarcane juice, liquor, clarified butter, milk, emulsified yogurt, and sweet drinking water. All the islands are completely surrounded by these oceans, and each ocean is equal in breadth to the island it surrounds. Maharaj Priyavrata, the husband of Queen Barhishmati, gave sovereignty over these islands to his respective sons, namely Agnidra, Idamajva, Yagyabahu, Hiranyareta, Grihaprashta, Medhatiti, and Vitihotra. Thus they all became kings by the order of their father.
King Priyavrata then gave his daughter Urjaswati in marriage to Shukracharya, who begot in her a daughter named Devayani.
My dear king, a devotee who was taking shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material waves, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death, and he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful. For a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once.
While enjoying his material opulences with full strength and influence, Maharaj Priyavrata once began to consider that although he had fully surrendered to the great saint Narada and was actually on the path of Krishna consciousness, he had somehow become again entangled in material activities. Thus his mind now became restless, and he began to speak in a spirit of renunciation.
The king thus began criticizing himself. Alas, how condemned I have become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment, which is exactly like a covered well. I have had enough. I am not going to enjoy any more. Just see how I have become like a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. Because of this, I am condemned.
By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrata reawakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons. He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification, and his great and opulent kingdom, and he completely renounced all attachment. His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastimes for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great saint Narada.
There are many famous verses regarding Maharaj Priyavrata's activities.
You can read this one too.
To stop the quarreling among different peoples, Maharaj Priyavrata marked boundaries at rivers, at the edges of mountains and forests, so no one would trespass upon another's property.
And you can read the last one.
As a great follower and devotee of the sage Narada, Maharaj Priyavrata considered hellish the opulences he had achieved by dint of fruited activities and mystic power, whether in the lower or heavenly planets or in the human society.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're seeing in the way that these verses are playing out, we're understanding the purification process that happens within Grihastha ashram. When you enter Grihastha ashram correctly and you do your duty nicely, this is the natural way that things will play out. Now, you don't necessarily have to, and in this age of Kali Yuga, it's also not recommended that you take sannyas and you go and leave. But if your family is devotees, then you and your wife, for example, you can renounce together, and you can have this very same mood of renunciation and this spirit of, feeling this humility that he's expressing of, oh, I wasted so much time in sense gratification. We have to go through that. We have to go through that period of time that, we seemingly waste, because that's what purifies us. And then it's okay to lament afterwards. But that doesn't mean that we don't go through it, because that's what's going to bring us to this level. So we'll go ahead and focus on verse 35. Okay. Naivam vida purushakara urukramasya. Naivam vidha purushakara urukramasya. Pumsam tadangri rajasa jita sadgunanam. Pumsam tarangri rajasa jita sadgunanam. Chitram vidura vigata sakridadatita. Chitram vidura vigata sakridadatita. Yana madhyayam aduna sajahati bandham. Yana madhyayam aduna sajahati bandham. Please chant. Naivam vidha purushakara urukramasya. Pumsam tarangri rajasa jita sadgunanam. Chitra sakridadatita. Yana madhya madna sajahati bandham. Naivam vidha purushakara urukramasya. Pumsam tarangri rajasa jita shadgunanam. Chitram vidura vigata sakridadadita. Yana madeya maduna sajahati bandam. Naivam vidha purushakara urukramasya. Pumsam tarangri rajasa jita shadgunanam. Chitram vidura vigata sakridadadita. Yana madeya maduna sajahati bandham. Okay. We'll move on to the synonyms. Together, please. Na, not. Evam vidha, like that. Purushakara, personal influence. Uru Kramasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pumsham, of the devotees. Tarangri, of his lotus feet. Rajasa, by the dust. Jitta Sat Gunanam, who have conquered the influence of the 6 kinds of material whips. Chitram, wonderful. Vidura Vigata, the 5th grade person, or the untouchable. Sakrit, only once. Adadita, if he utters. Yat, whose. Namadeyam, holy name. Aduna, immediately. Sa, he. Jahati, gives up. Bandham, material bondage. Translation. My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Tulsi Saki, can you please read part of the purport for me?
Shukadev Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit about the activities of King Priyavrata, and since the king might have had doubts about these wonderful, uncommon activities, Shukadev Goswami reassured him. My dear king, he said, don't be doubtful about the wonderful activities of Priyavrata. For a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is possible because the Lord is also known as Urukrama. Urukrama is the name for Lord Vamanadev, who performed the wonderful act of occupying the 3 worlds with 3 footsteps. Lord Vamanadev requested 3 paces of land from Maharaj Bali, and when Maharaj Bali agreed to grant them, the Lord immediately covered the entire world with 2 footsteps, and for the 3rd step, he placed his foot upon Bali Maharaj's head. Sri Jayadev Goswami. Chalayasi Vikramane Balim Adbhuta Vamana Padanakha Nira Janita Jana Pavana Keshavadhrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. All glories to Lord Keshava, who assumed the form of a dwarf. O Lord of the universe, who takes away everything inauspicious for the devotees. O wonderful Vamanadev, you tricked the great demon Bali Maharaj by your steps. The water that touched the nails of your lotus feet when you pierced through the covering of the universe purifies all living entities in the form of the river Ganges.
someone else want to finish off? Go ahead.
Since the Supreme Since the Supreme Lord is all powerful, he can do things that seem wonderful for a common man. Similarly, a devotee who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord can also do wonderful things unimaginable to a common man. By the grace of the dust of those lotus feet, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore teaches us to take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet.
Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitamam vishame bhavam buddho kripaya tava pada pankaja stita duli sadrisham vichintaya.
O son of Nanda Maharaj, I am your eternal servant, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms of your lotus feet. Lord Chaitanya teaches us to come in touch with the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, for then there will undoubtedly be all success. Because of the material body, every living entity in material existence is always disturbed by Shat Guna, 6 waves: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, invalidity, and death. Furthermore, another Shatguna are the mind of the 5 sense organs. Not to speak of a sanctified devotee, even a chandala, an outcast who is untouchable, is immediately freed from material bondage if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Sometimes caste brahmanas argue that unless one changes his body, he cannot be accepted as a brahmana. For since the present body is obtained as a result of past actions, one who has in the past acted as a brahmana takes birth in a brahmana family. Therefore, they contend without such a brahmanical body, one cannot be accepted as a brahmana. Herein it is said, however, that even Vidyura Vigata, a chandala, a 5th-class untouchable, is freed if he utters the holy name even once. Being freed means that he immediately changes his body. Sanatana Goswami confirms this.
Yata kanchanatam yati kamsam rasa vidanata tata diksha vidanena dvijatam jayate nrinam. When a person, even though a chandala, is initiated by a pure devotee into chanting the holy name of the Lord, his body changes as he follows the instructions of the spiritual master. Although one cannot see how his body has changed, we must accept on the grounds of the authoritative statements of the Shastras that he changes his body. This is to be understood without arguments. This verse clearly says, Sha Jahati Bandam, he gives up his material bondage. The body is a symbolic representation of material bondage according to one's karma. Although sometimes we cannot see the gross body, chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord immediately changes the subtle body. And because the subtle body changes, the living entity is immediately freed from material bondage. After all changes of the gross body are conducted by the subtle body, after the destruction of the gross body, the subtle body takes the living entity form from his present gross body to another. In the subtle body, the mind is predominant, and therefore, if one's mind is always absorbed in remembering the activities or the lotus feet of the Lord, he is to be understood to have already changed his present body and become purified. Therefore, it is irrefutable that a chandala or any fallen or low-born person can become a brahmana simply by the method of bona fide initiation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. I'll read the translation one more time. My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Wow, what a beautiful verse and beautiful purport. I have a few things that I wanted to mention. I'll talk about, this taking shelter of the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord, and what does it mean to be immediately relieved from material bondage. I'll speak on these things in a second, but first I wanted to address that Srimad Bhagavatam, especially we're about to get into the 5th canto, there are many fantastic things. We've already seen plenty of fantastic, and by fantastic I mean like difficult to comprehend, almost seems like make-believe, these types of things. We've already seen some in previous cantos, and we just read about that today, and these oceans made of milk and liquor and all of these things. And for some people, this can be very difficult to digest. I spoke with someone the other day who, this was their difficulty with Christianity as well, was that Christians, and they accept the Bible as literal, like Noah literally built an ark and put 2 of each animal on the ark, and Moses literally, called upon the Lord, and the Lord was able to split the sea for him. Christians believe this is literal, this is fact, this actually happened, this is history. Same with us. We believe these things that we're reading, we believe that they are fact. This is actual history, this is actual science. But some people want to take it as metaphorical. These are symbolic. The thing is, it works both ways. It is fact, it is history, and you can take it metaphorically. But a lot of these things in the beginning of our practice, we might have to accept that we cannot understand them. This does not mean that we give up our intelligence or our discrimination, or that we blindly accept anything. That is never recommended. Srila Prabhupada says time and time again that we are not blind followers, and doubt is a good thing. To question these things is, we should use our intelligence in this way. But there does come a point where what it comes down to is faith. I'm going to read these things that I cannot understand, because in this life I have not experienced them. And because I've seen these other things are true, the philosophy, we're not the body, chanting works, association with devotees, the effect of Harinam Sankirtan, because I know that this is true and I have experience of these things, I will, for now, just allow my mind to kind of rest, not think too hard about it, and I'll just accept that I'll understand one day. These crazy things that I'm reading, I'll get it, I'll understand one day. For now, I'm just going to leave it. And then later on, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, I'll ask again. And I'll see if I can digest the answers that I receive a little bit more easily. This has happened to me plenty of times when I'm asking questions about the philosophy. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to understand that right now. I have to ask again later on down the road, after my mind, intelligence, and false ego has been purified by the chanting of the holy name. Yeah, the Lord is inconceivable. So this should be one factor that helps us to just kind of accept some of these things, for now. Like I said, in the future we'll ask again, and one day we will understand. But understanding that the Lord is inconceivable, I think I read in Chaitanya Charitamrita recently, there was a verse that said, like, this is kind of the only way to understand some of our philosophy, some of the knowledge that we receive. We have to accept that the Lord is not bound by our limited human capacity of understanding. We have to accept that He can do things way beyond what is, imaginable by our tiny little mind, and beyond that, and beyond that, and beyond that. This is what it means. This is what God means. So we're going to start to see lots of these things as we move through the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, and we're going to be challenged to, understand things in different ways than we're used to, and accept some things based on faith. Faith in what? Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. If these three things align, then we can have faith in them. Then we can accept them as truth. So then I'll move on to these more heart-centered points that the verse focuses on today, like how a devotee who has taken shelter from the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the 6 material whips. Wow. So what does it mean to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord? It means to take shelter of the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas are those who reside at the lotus feet of the Lord. And so if we're taking shelter of the devotees, then we're automatically taking shelter of the Lord and his lotus feet. And then once we do that, it says that when we chant, we can become immediately relieved of the bondage to material existence if we utter the Lord's holy name even once. Immediately relieved. Sometimes devotees might get discouraged when they read things like this. Immediately I'm relieved from all of my sins. Immediately I'm liberated from material bondage, but I'm still here and I'm still struggling. And I've been chanting Hare Krishna for a couple years now, and I saw plenty of anarthas, and I really, I'm praying that I'll make it in this life because Srila Prabhupada said we can, but it might be questionable. We might think like this. So how do we understand that, like, as soon as we take the holy name, we're immediately relieved from bondage to material existence? Well, I understood this in two ways. One is that immediately the process has been started. Like as soon as we utter the holy name of Krishna for the first time in our entire, material bondage, the process has been started, and Krishna is not letting us go from that point on. So if we go on Harinam and we go to the bars and there's a bunch of drunk people and they start dancing to the kirtan and they try to say it, even if it's slurred, even if it's, they're in intoxicated headspace, Krishna saw what they just offered to him, and he's in control of their life now, and he is taking them back. So they've been immediately saved by that Harinam. And then another way we can understand it is that actually, and Srila Prabhupada did say that we can go home back to Godhead in this life, in one life, he said, if we're sincere and we follow the 4 regulative principles and we chant our japa nicely, associate with devotees like this, then we can go back to Godhead in one life. So this one life appears to drag on. Okay, I've got another couple years before I enter into the next ashram, and then what to speak of once I'm in that ashram, then I have to, take care of family matters, and I'm trying to hold on to the holy name for dear life because I don't know how else I'll survive. And then I grow a little bit older, and it just seems like, I'm still being purified, and Artha Nivritti is taking a long time. It feels like a long time in this life because that's how we're perceiving time, going by. But what is this one life compared to eternity? No, it's absolutely nothing. It's less than a little pencil point on an infinite line. Like that's what it is. So in that sense, it is immediate. It's like a snap of your fingers. And even in the material, like people in material consciousness can tell you when they're in their 90s, they're like, oh my gosh, that went by fast. Like I blink and it's over. So what to speak for devotees who are constantly engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord and making constant advancement towards the goal of life. And we're so fortunate because we have a step-by-step process. And we'll never reach a stage where we feel like, okay, that's it, I've made it, I made it to the end, I reached my goal, now what? That's never, ever, ever gonna happen. Actually, the closer that we get to the goal, the further away we feel like we are. So maybe right now I think, okay, I think I'm at Anartha Nivritti. So my next step is gonna be Nishta. This is my meditation. This is my next goal that I'm gonna spend, however long it takes to try to attain. And once I do attain Nishta, will I feel like I attained it? maybe part of me will know, okay, I think I'm pretty steady, but then humility kicks in. The humility of the pure devotees kick in, and so we start to feel, actually, I'm so fallen and so low. And then from Nishta we go to, attachment and taste, and then we feel like even more fallen simultaneously. These two things are happening at the same time. That's why the most pure devotees, these Nitya Siddhas, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one bhajan, they're praying, to Krishna, wow, please let me worship you under the guidance of Rupa Goswami, and their meditation is on, service, physical service that they can see in their heart at the lotus feet of Shri Shri Radhe Shyam, Shri Shri Radhe Kalachandji. And then the very next song, they're speaking that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has the bhajan, Amar Jivan Sada Paperata. He's saying, I am the lowest of the low. I feel great happiness when I see other people suffer. And, he's questioning how Krishna can even, how can he ever, come to love Krishna? And he's praying, Krishna, you just have to be merciful to me. So these two things are happening side by side. And actually, this is the greatest bliss. This is the greatest happiness that we can achieve. I was reading, or I was hearing, today or yesterday, this morning, maybe it was this morning, Sachinandana Maharaj, Govardhan Retreat. Yeah. He was, I was listening to a lecture from 2022 Govardhan Retreat, and he was just continuously reminding us that this mood of separation, this mood of feeling distant from Krishna and craving to be with him and desiring to rise up to a level worthy of him, worthy of his association, worthy of his service, the service to Shri Shri Radhe Shyam. This separation, this humility is the highest platform that we can possibly attain. It's the highest ecstasy. Lord Chaitanya came to this world in the mood of Srimati Radharani just to experience these bhavs that she was feeling, this level of ecstasy, which the highest being that mood of separation. Where is Krishna? And so, I don't know how I got there. But we can, this is the process that we're a part of. And this happens instantly. That's where this came from. This actually happens instantly, although it feels like this very long, difficult process. Gosh, anartha nivritti, but it's actually instant. Before you know it, you're thinking of Krishna in these moods, and you still feel fallen, but it's ecstasy now. And then in the purport, I like Srila Prabhupada goes into how the material body is becoming purified. Also, not just the subtle body. We know, through the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, through attending class and praying, the subtle body is becoming purified, but also the material body is becoming purified. And this made me think of Nectar. And he said, this made me think of Nectar of Instruction, the 6th verse, of how we should not judge devotees based on their bodies. Their bodies are completely spiritual and pure, and our materially contaminated mind might look at the body of a pure devotee and make some judgment, and that is such a very grave offense. I was actually reflecting recently. I've been having this realization more often, and I pray that that this realization continues to go deeper and deeper into my heart, is how subtle our judgments can be, how quick they come and how subtle they can be. You might see someone that wears their hair slightly differently, and I come up with a whole story about who they are as a person and how their life must have been, and I don't know, all of these random thoughts that just flood my mind, and they're false. And then I've had the experience a few times where I don't even catch my mind doing that, I just look at somebody, I look at how they walk, and I'm like, oh, da-da-da-da-da, they must da-da-da, I have so many assumptions, and then I find out that I'm wrong, and I'm like, and that's when I catch my mind. That's when I catch my mind, is when I find out that I'm wrong about this person. Or I see somebody who's too beautiful, and automatically my envy causes me to think, oh, they must be, stuck up. They must be like, and then they're the nicest person I've ever met in my life. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. Krishna, we should really not make judgments about devotees based on what we see. We have to start trying to see through spiritual vision, samadarshana, seeing Krishna within everyone's heart, everyone in the entire world, but especially devotees. Devotees are so rare in this world. To be amongst devotees is such a rare blessing. And so also, Srila Prabhupada is saying that our own bodies become purified as well. So we should also not view ourselves based on our physical bodies, or based on even things that we did in our life before we were practicing Krishna consciousness. I was also remembering last night I was laying in my bed and I was just having memories of like mistakes that I had made before I knew any better, before I was aware of what I was doing. I was kind of in that state. I was comparing my consciousness now to my consciousness then. And I could really feel compassion for that version of myself who was making so many mistakes, because they just actually weren't aware. That person, me, I actually just wasn't aware of my actions, what I was doing. The senses were completely in control. And how can we judge ourselves based on that? We can only choose to, understand more deeply that we're not our body, that we're the spirit soul, and move on from there. Even in 10 years, I'll judge myself for mistakes I'm making now, I'm sure. But that's not going to be so helpful in the long run. I mean, we can express humility, we can lament, but if we're allowing it to like make judgments and affect us in that way, then that can't be healthy. Because if we're judging ourselves, naturally that means we're probably going to be judging others as well. And if we know that we're judging others, it's a reflection of our own heart. So these are a few other thoughts. Okay, and then Prabhupada said, how do we purify our material bodies? How does this happen? What causes this to happen? In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, our own bodies become purified as we follow the instructions of our spiritual masters. This is the process for purification. So Srila Prabhupada gave us the very simple, very basic, following the 4 regulative principles and chanting 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If we follow this, then we will very gradually become purified. But in order to really make that process happen to the fullest possibility, as quickly and efficiently, thoroughly as possible, then we have to follow the other instructions as well. So these 5 instructions are non-negotiable, and there should not be too many instances where it's not possible, unless maybe you're like on your deathbed and or like there's some physical incapability, you're not able to chant. You're just literally not able to chant. Other than that, we should find a way to do it. But then there's other instructions that really help us in our spiritual life, such as attending morning program, rising early in the morning to chant, reading and hearing daily. These things, as we should be very, very sincere in our endeavor to follow these instructions, because this is how we're going to be purified. And again, there will be life situations that affect that. But as long as the sincerity is there, then sincerity means that when I can do it, I really do it. I don't make excuses that, I can't do it today because I'm tired, or because I'm this, or because I'm that. We should know within our heart if we're making excuses or if we're actually, unable to do something. And our spiritual masters and the devotees around us can help us to see what the real cause is for whatever decision we make. Yeah. So and to follow these instructions and to stick strictly to the instructions that we've been given from our gurus. This is what it means to take shelter of the dust of the lotus feet of Krishna. This is what it means to take shelter of the Vaishnavas. To take shelter means to follow their instructions. means to trust them and have faith that their words are going to help us rise to the highest level of Krishna consciousness. And this will help us to chant purely. Because when we chant purely, that was another thing. In the verse, Krishna is saying, we can be relieved of material existence if we utter the holy name of the Lord even once. So this can be taken to mean like utter it even once, in the Namabhasya stage, or it can mean one time of chanting the holy name in this platform of Shuddhanam. So and this one is like lightning. Once we utter the name in Shuddhanam, there's no going back. Unless we start making offenses to devotees. That's the one thing that can always take us back a few steps. But yeah, if we chant purely, then we'll be relieved from bondage to material existence instantaneously. And so all of these other aspects of Krishna consciousness, following the instructions of our gurus being primary, this helps us to actually come to that stage of chanting purely. These are my thoughts. Actually, I didn't realize I went over time. But we can take some discussion points if anyone has some thoughts on this. Tosisaki?
So I had a question. As we're reading through these verses where we talk about, as you mentioned, the far out situations of ocean of milk and nectar and honey, we should put some energy into trying to understand it, even if we don't understand it, or just because I know, like in Mayapur, they're trying to, make a display of the entire cosmos as it is mentioned in the Vedas. So should we, what is your thought on, like, even if we don't understand, how much energy should we put into trying to understand it?
I think that depends on each individual's inclination. If somebody is really inclined towards this type of thing, towards the science type of information that we can get from Srimad Bhagavatam, then go into it. Whatever is going to inspire us. I think that's probably like a point worth emphasizing, is that if it's going to inspire us to dissect these things, we still might not reach the root of it and fully understand. But if it inspires us to try, then try. Try until you get tired of it. Yeah, that's what I would say. And then if we're not, like for me personally, I don't feel like this is like information that makes or breaks my Krishna consciousness personally. Some people might feel that way. Some people actually, like people that are really interested, that have this brain built for science, they might feel like, this, like studying this enlivens me in my Krishna consciousness. Also, maybe if I don't understand it, it might weaken my faith, so I really want to understand it. There's plenty of resources for people that want to do that research. Hridayananda Maharaj is very amazing at explaining these types of things. There's the Bhaktivedanta Institute in Gainesville, Florida, that they are all about researching and studying the cosmology of the universe and these types of things. So if you're inclined towards that, go into it. Don't hesitate. But for some people, maybe it's like, I'm more maybe interested in other aspects, the more poetic aspects of Krishna consciousness. And so this I'll just, Hare Krishna, I'll accept for now. I'll have faith I'll understand one day, and I'll focus my energy on what is inspiring to me. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Do you think any disagreement maybe also?
Yeah, I am agreeing with you. Like the whole Vedas or the whole Bhagavatam is like a big like encyclopedia, or like a big like manual, and nobody reads from the front to the back. I mean, you're supposed to for the Bhagavatam. That didn't really make sense what I said. It's more like an encyclopedia. Everything in there is very useful, but some people will be drawn to some things more than the other. However, one thing I will say, I think it's important for everybody still to at least try to go through the Bhagavatam and just see what you can understand, just so that you can come out of it with this general at least this general sense of like, wow, look at how amazing the Lord is. Just to have this sense of like awe and reverence to start off, to see that, okay, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who can do anything. Because if you don't go through this purification,
Tap it. Hit it like this.
hold it on the top. Okay. If you don't go through the process of understanding God in the different forms, in the forms of like Brahman and then Paramatma, and you just go straight to trying to understand him as Bhagavan, it's very easy for us to slip into this this conception of him as just like a person like us, and seeing his dealings with in Vrindavan as being like mundane dealings. So that's why they say it's the same as like when you take darshan of the deities. It's recommended that you start with the feet and you go and you go up like that. We're supposed to start with the first cantos to go through the necessary purification and understand Krishna in the supreme form of God, so that we can properly understand him as a person. That was my thoughts on that. So we don't have to understand everything. I don't understand. Like when I was reading fifth canto, I was like, but I came out of it being like, whoa. Yeah. As long as you have this idea of like, whoa, then.
That's a good point too. Yeah. Yeah. Like really getting down into accepting the inconceivable nature of Krishna. That's what it comes down to for a lot of these things. And knowing that one day we'll be able to conceive of it a little bit more and a little bit more. And then there will be something else that's inconceivable. But yeah, I wanted to say, like, I don't necessarily think you were saying this, but I was hearing Satchidananda Maharaj also, I've been listening to him a lot lately, that we cannot wait until we understand like this aspect of the Lord, like, you know, this before we try to approach his, you know, more personal or more esoteric aspects, because then we'll be waiting forever. So I'm not sure if anyone else has any thoughts on that. I wish that I could elaborate more, but my realization doesn't go so far. I just wanted to share what I heard from him. That we can't. He was also saying in reference to our sadhana practice, we cannot wait until we're pure in heart before we approach the Lord, before we approach the deity, before we approach Radha and Krishna in a mood of service. That approaching Radha and Krishna in a mood of service is what's going to purify our heart. I was also reading a book by Shivaram Maharaj last night, and he was saying the same exact thing. He was saying, specifically when it comes to deity worship, he was saying, if you want to be completely pure before you ever step foot on the altar, then you're never going to step foot on the altar. So we accept, we humble ourselves, we accept I'm so impure, and then we, you know, beg, please, you know, engage me in your service, and we step on the altar, and that purifies us. So I was just thinking that in a similar way, like as we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, like we don't want to stop at fifth canto because we didn't understand it and just like get caught up in you know, the intricacies of it, and then not continue further, you know, because yeah, like you said, there are some devotees that do stop at the fifth canto and they're like, never mind, you know, and that's really unfortunate, because if they just kept reading, they'd reach the sweetness. A lot of devotees need the sweetness also, to keep us attracted in Krishna's service. There needs to be both, for sure. Any other conversation on this point or another point? Okay. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.